Hey, we're here with Matt Rissell, CEO of TSheets, the number one rated app in apps.com, which is a website that Intuit runs for QuickBooks Online users to find third-party apps that talk and are friendly with QuickBooks Online in order to solve issues that QuickBooks Online cannot solve in itself, and third-party developers like TSheets that happen to be best in class in the timesheets category solves really, really well. Hey, Matt, how we doing?
Good, Hector. Thanks for the conversation, taking the time out of your day.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm excited about talking to you because I saw that on December 5th, there was a big announcement. Intuit, the makers of QuickBooks, which is a company that I've been working with for a very long time as an accountant and a QuickBooks consultant, made a pretty big announcement of an acquisition of a company called
TSheets.
TSheets. And TSheets has been open for how many years, Matt? How long did you open the company?
We were incorporated in 2006, so about 11 years.
And when you first started the company, were you out there to solve the exact same problem that you're solving now, or did that sort of evolve?
Fundamentally, yeah. I mean, the product is essentially doing what it originally did, and it's solving the original problem and that I had as a small business owner, and that's why I had it built. But also, in addition to that, it also solves a whole bunch more, several more problems that I didn't necessarily have at the time.
Right. The users, once they start using it, they start saying, "Oh, can you get it to this? Can you get it to do that?" And that's kind of how it evolves.
Exactly right. So, for instance, a huge portion of our customer base tracks time so that they can invoice their clients. And, that wasn't the original problem that I had. Mine was tracking time for payroll.
For payroll, right? So I'll walk you real quick through my perception of how this whole thing grew, and then maybe you can tell me, add some additional things to it, which will add some context in terms of why is Intuit making this purchase. So first of all, I think you and I would probably agree that although you do have several talented folks in your programming team, there are also a lot of talented folks in many programming teams. And there's many folks out there trying to solve the time tracking problem. Now, what I've seen over the years as an accountant and a business consultant is that almost like clockwork, every small business owner, small business manager, anyone dealing with payroll always has to do payroll, and payroll happens to be dreadful. Now, a lot of times we don't understand what is dreadful about payroll, and there are subcomponents to it. I mean, there is, gathering information about where the employees are and where they worked and their time. There's dealing with overtime. There's approving the timesheets, paying them on time, dealing with reimbursements, scheduling, clock in, clock out. I mean, there's so many, I would say, sub legs of time tracking. But in a very essential way, at least the person that processes payroll, what they essentially want is employee name, total number of hours, so I can just process payroll and stop digging through manual paper timesheets, spreadsheets. And then adding a layer to that, then we also have the approval process where you ideally want to delegate all time tracking to the employee, so that way you don't have a full-time manager following every employee around to figure out when they came in and when they came out, when they punched out for lunch. So ideally we want to delegate that time tracking process to the employees themselves. But like all employees in the world, although I love all of my employees, there are some that just are either lazy or they do the wrong thing and track the time wrongly. So you do kind of need someone with a little bit more vested interest on the finances of the company to make sure that these timesheets are correct. That way you process payroll correctly. And then from there, I think there's a whole bunch of other things that you guys have been solving for. Can you kind of tell me from there how TSheets has evolved in what it is now?
Okay, so that was a great summary, really good summary. And so number one, I would add one more layer onto that payroll process that it gets complicated and it's super time consuming, is overtime calculations as well in that payroll process. So you track the time, then once it's tracked, then you have to actually calculate the overtime rules. Then it gets approved. Then it gets to sync with payroll. And one of the things that is you cannot underestimate that when people say payroll is so freaking hard, like it's such a pain in the butt, it's not because the payroll processor has caused any problems. That's not a big deal. I mean, there's so many different payroll processors that are out there that take all the information, it crunches all the tax calculations, et cetera, and then spits out a paycheck. That's a solved problem. What really takes time is taking all of these, thousands or hundreds of paper timesheets, putting them in a spreadsheet, manually running the calculations, then uploading them into the payroll software by hand. And that takes hours. Sometimes, we have people come in that say, gosh, you just saved me 2.5 days every other week. So, I don't want to underestimate that. So hopefully that adds up a little bit of clarity. Does that answer your question?
Yeah, there was another layer that I kind of wanted you to touch in, which is on, how all of this moved to mobile and the power of GPS. Can you kind of explain to us why you went in that strategy, or what positive things you got from going in the mobile experience strategy?
So, what's interesting is that we were the first time tracking system in the world with a mobile application on the iPhone, believe it or not because we were super smart, but because when we were solving my problem, I had 4 locations. I had salespeople out in the field, and I had delivery drivers, and I always wanted to know where everybody was. And so it was originally built with that concept in mind of being mobile and being able to track employees, albeit it was much more rudimentary than it is now. And the other really important component is that there is a concept where not only are you tracking the time has to be allocated to a job or to a customer or to a client or to something. And so that way you can job cost accurately and really know where your single largest expense item is being allocated, so that you can know some jobs are profitable or not. So that's really how those 2 components came into play.
Right. And I want to move on to, so now that we understand what TSheets was, what it evolves to, what problem it solves, I'd like to briefly talk about pricing, just to add some context, not to try to sell the app to anyone. But in average, people are paying about $4 to $5 per employee that's added into their system per month, right? That's about what the pricing strategy is. When you talk about just the GPS feature, I remember having some clients that managed a fleet, delivery drivers, and they were paying for about 12 trucks. They were paying like $1,500 a month to manage the fleet's location. And most of the times these employees already had, remember the Nextels, the phones flash, walkie-talkie. So most of these people had walkie-talkies, and sometimes they bought the fleet management service through Nextel and all that stuff. But I mean, the contrast, assuming that everyone has a smartphone, and that's a pretty safe assumption to make nowadays, the contrast of a fleet management system, and forget about just the time tracking, just where's my asset? Where's my employee? Where's my truck? That's a huge value. Have you guys thought about that piece of it? The people are maybe using you guys just for fleet management and bypassing costly fleet management costs?
A whole bunch of customers do. A whole bunch of customers. But in addition to just the fleet management portion, a lot of those fleet companies want allocation of time because they have to use the time for payroll as well. And so the one thing that we don't do is that some of those fleet management systems will track like how long the vehicle is on. But a really cool concept, Hector, that a lot of people have really not tapped into. We have some customers that do it, but they create what's called a variance report. And this variance report is a mash between the time that they've worked and the number of hours that their vehicle is on. And so when they mash those, they see if there's a variance between the two, because that will indicate whether or not people are using the vehicle for personal use, or vice versa, if people shouldn't be on the clock and they are. It's a pretty cool accountability system, and really works well with big fleets.
So now you answer all the preliminary questions I've had about the app itself and what the app is now. So that's a good synopsis of what the app is, the product itself. And TSheets only has this one product. You guys have not diversified into multiple products. TSheets, the company, has one product called TSheets, and that's it. And I'll ask you some questions about whether it'll remain like that, or if there's any open answers to where, what the new products and services will look like in the future. But I want to move on to a piece of your business that's very dear to my heart, which is your relationship with accountants. Did you know right away when you started the company that relationship with accountants was going to be so important, or did you kind of learn that along the way?
No, I wish we were that smart. No, at first, we didn't even consider it as a channel or building relationships with accountants. And then what happened is once we built our integration with QuickBooks, we started studying QuickBooks go-to-market model, right? And it's very clear that no other company has or ever has built as quality and as many relationships with the accounting industry as Intuit and QuickBooks has. No one ever on the planet. And so what we did is we just followed their playbook. And it took several years and lots of money, honestly, figuring out how to build relationships, how to make those relationships meaningful, how to create value for the accountants. And then once you create a value for them, how to get them and train them to start referring their client base and educating them on how we apply to their client base. And so that they start referring us to all other clients. I mean, statistically, 50% of all of your clients as an accountant will implement TSheets.
Right. And if you kind of follow suit with companies like ADP, which write one out of every 6 paychecks in the United States or something like that. I mean, they're just humongous. I mean, ADP itself, which is not a timesheet company, it's a payroll company, actually writes the leading indicators that the U.S. government uses to understand unemployment numbers. So having that data is extremely powerful. I mean, Matt, I believe you guys have about 500,000 employees under management with TSheets. Was that the correct number?
Just over.
So you have a pretty interesting sample of the U.S. population of employees. Possibly you have a cut section of a particular vertical or group of verticals. Maybe you don't have the complete array of all the industries, but your data can pretty much tell whether the average American is working more or less, something like that, right?
Yeah.
Isn't that interesting use of your data?
It is. So some of the things that we plan on mining data and specifically to create value and insights to our customer base is endless. Benchmarking and things that we can give to the government as well, as far as, our companies hiring, our companies letting people go, our companies expanding in the number of hours, and think about all of the benchmarks. Hey, Mr. Plumber, your team, your current labor expenses are X, percent above the current benchmark. Maybe that's something you want to look at. Or, geez, Mr. Plumber, you're really efficient because you have X number of less travel hours than the standard plumber with your size or something like that. You really provide valuable insights, which you can do as a time tracking system on your own. And you can get really, some really intrinsic, some valuable data. But as we mash the combination between the general ledger and between TSheets, from QuickBooks and from TSheets, it's going to be extraordinary. And then you add on the payroll component to that as well. We're going to be able to provide insights for customers that truly create a difference. It will impact the way that they make decisions.
Right, and accountants love that because obviously accountants love data, but most important, accountants love to be able to back up their assertions with data, right? Because that's our big thing that we're afraid of making an assertion if there isn't data to back it up. So it'll be wonderful to see where TSheets is going in terms of giving us analytics that we can use for our consultative, sales and consultative sessions with our clients. But I want to just kind of wrap up with the accounting conversation, and then I'll ask you a little bit about the future. So, and I'll give away some of the Intuit trade secrets on accountant relationships. So randomly one day, I changed my Facebook status to like the Green Bay Packers. Don't ask me why, 3-4 years ago. And within a week, I received Green Bay Packer socks from TSheets. Now, TSheets and we have a good relationship. I refer clients to you guys, and you guys know who I am and at least what I stand for. So you definitely have someone in your marketing team monitoring what's going on with their accountants that they trust and love, and you're making sure that you're recognizing us for what we are, what we represent. And when my third son was born, you guys send me a onesie for my son. So I'm going to tell you, and that's what you say. It took a lot of money. It's not cheap to have a team stocking accountants, right? That are part of, you're part of your pro team, and give them gifts just like that. So you guys have really done a number when it comes to marketing. And that's one of the things that I really admire about you guys. And you guys, but the part that really matters to us, and some of us care about little gifts here and there, but the part that really matters to us is when we make a recommendation to a client to say, call this guy, call these people, whether you work or not, what we want is that when they say, Hector told me to call you, we want that red carpet service. And I don't know how you guys do it and where the ROI is on this army of customer service that you guys have. But that is really what I think any accountant would agree with me on. That's the one part that TSheets really shines. I mean, the culture in your company, it's infatuating, really. So I wanted to move on. And Matt, you want to add something to that? I just wanted to ask you the question that was with that statement. But do you want to add anything to that?
Only thing I would add is one, thank you for saying all of those things. And it's a true testament to, it's to how good the team is. There's a bunch of people out there that have, companies that have teams that just don't work this hard. And even more than work this hard, they care this much. Like they care, and they truly care about the accountants. They care about you as a human being in your lives, and they want to build a relationship with you. And it's out of that true caring that those things happen. And certainly guerrilla marketing is a component of that. But to the last point that you mentioned, one of our personal guarantees, and I personally guarantee this as the CEO of TSheets, soon to be the VP of, I guess that's the segment.
Timesheet management for Intuit, right?
Is that if you ever refer a customer, a client to us, one of your accounting clients, we will always make you look good. And there is an inherent risk every time you refer a third-party application to your client because it's a direct reflection on you. We will work our faces off so that you look good. And, the kind of influence that you have created, Hector, not everybody has done that, nor will everyone get a chance to create that in their lifetime. And when you create the kind of influence that you have, Hector, both not only to your clients, but also to the general accounting population. I mean, they look to you as a leader. They look to you as a thought leader. They look to you as someone that they really trust to help guide what's coming. And you need to protect that. And you have to be very prudent on the things that you recommend. And so super grateful that you have chosen to have a relationship with us.
Yeah, and thank you for those words. And that's actually a perfect segue, because you guys love your accountants, all that stuff. But your accountants are not your customers, because you try to have accountants in your customer base that don't pay a dime. And that is such an interesting proposal. You're saying, hey, accountants, here's a free account for you. Use it for your practice. Love it, learn it. Call us if you have any questions. That way, when you're recommending, it comes from a place of truth, right? I've used it. I love it. Yes. And a lot of accountants, we don't know how much our software costs because, we get it for free. But that's a different story. But what I wanted to tell you, and it's a really important statement, because we're at the end of 2017 and we're moving on to a new year. And the thought leaders of our industry are making a really strong case about a concept called value pricing. Now, I want to tell you where I'm coming with this. I use your TSheets free app in my office so people can clock in and out and their lunches, and we can process payroll. I have never, for the last 3 years I've used your app, used it to bill my client, to invoice my client, okay? I personally do not believe on my company, I would say the whole industry, but my company, our business model of using timesheets to invoice our clients. But I use the timesheets to know what my employees are working on. Like I remember 3 years ago, I used to send someone a text and say, hey, what client are you working on? I don't do that anymore. I log into timesheets and on the TSheets, and I know what client they're working on. Now, do I, in a macro level, look at maybe a month, a quarter's worth of productivity of an employee just to kind of get an idea, a gauge of where they are? I do it, but I've never used a timesheet to invoice a customer. I'm actually vehemently against that on certain industries. Now, I have some engineering clients that work with governments using TSheets, and they wouldn't live without it. because this is the only way the government will pay, right? With timesheets. I have a diver that uses your product. They're an industrial diver. They send these guys down on the sewers and they're cleaning. I mean, it's a big deal to know, how many minutes they were underwater, literally, and they use TSheets to track all this stuff. And
I'd love to
they
do a case study on that.
the what?
I'd love to do a case study on that.
Yeah, so it's such an interest. So I mean, every client will have their own specific reason in which they have to do time track, which doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to invoice your client with that time, but there's some industries you absolutely have to. So that's a statement I wanted to make as an accountant, because I know that time tracking apps, and you guys are not the only ones, often get attacked for that. And you can take all the blows you want, but it is possible to coexist with a timesheet company that provides a great service and not necessarily having to believe that I have to invoice my client myself by the hour. So I wanted to make that statement. I know, Matt, this is going to be even a bigger deal as Intuit's, firm of the future brand, right, moves more into this value pricing thing. And there's going to be a lot of conflicting messages out there where, they're going to say, oh, you're an accountant, you shouldn't be talking about timesheets. And it's like, yeah, I don't for my billing, but I have many clients that you guys solve great problems for. So that's what I wanted to say about that. Now let's move on to kind of the ending here, Matt. So I wanted to tell you, I wanted to ask you really, what?
Can I add one thing to that?
Yeah, add that. Yeah, sure. Go ahead, please.
Thank you. The one thing I'd like to, that was extraordinary. And one thing I'd like to add is that not only do we offer it for free to accountants, which right now we have, I think, 16,000, soon to be 17,000 accountants that we give TSheets away for free so that they can know you and use and love it.
Well, soon 500,000 possibly with the pro advisor population.
Right. On close, the TSheets is going to roll out for free to 600,000 accountants across the world, which is super exciting for them to use it, for those to know it. And make no mistake, our goal as we go and we launch in this, our vision of TSheets stays the same. It stays exactly the same. It just accelerates it. It's just going to go faster.
Yeah, perfect. I know. And I know we're running a little long because, you're a big time CEO, recent acquisition. You're very popular nowadays. So I want to ask you a couple of things. One is TSheets, the team, because we haven't talked about your team. Your team is absolutely fabulous. I haven't had an interaction with a team member of yours in which the conversation didn't end with a smile of some sort. So I want to tell you that it's really, really important. And Intuit is a company that prides themselves on, and I'm wearing an Intuit shirt. I don't work for Intuit, for the folks that may be confused about. I don't work for QuickBooks. I kind of do, but I don't. Okay, but your team is fabulous. Customer service great, and Intuit has the same, I would say, attitude in terms of customer service, but it doesn't quite translate to the average end user. Like the average end user calls Intuit, and maybe they call after hours. Maybe he goes to an off-site customer service place, and you deal with strong accents and all that stuff. And I shouldn't be talking about strong accents because I have one, but I'm saying it's not as TSheets as it could be. So what do you think TSheets is going to do to Intuit in terms of upping the game? So I'll ask you about what Intuit will do to you, but what do you think TSheets, what kind of influence will you have in Intuit on your one place that it is your secret sauce, which is great marketing with accountants and great customer service? Do you think you can have an impact company-wide in this acquisition?
That's a really good question, Hector. And, the answer is yes. The short answer is yes, I do. And I can tell you, why is one, they've asked us to. They have asked us to stay who we are. They've asked us to infiltrate and not lose who we are, and infiltrate and help seep those great things into Intuit. Just as much as we have, as we can learn from them a lot. We have things that we can bring to the table as well. In fact, I will tell you, Brad Smith is somebody that's, I would consider a friend, somebody that has been my mentor for now like 4 years, that I meet with for lunch, a couple times a year. And somebody I've always really looked up to, like honestly, like really, truly looked up to. He wrote me a note here following the announcement. And it was probably one of, if not the single most impactful notes I think I've ever received in my life. And part of that is him describing how much he really admires the culture and the team that we have. So the answer is emphatic yes. We plan to keep who we are as a company, the focus that we have on the customer and the customer service, and staying super scrappy in our marketing and making, continue to keep guerrilla marketing as one of our secret sauces.
And on the other side of the coin, great answer, by the way, because I've always told you've told me, Hector, how can we take over the world together? I say, let's spread the message of customer service somehow, right? We know those conversations that we've had. But so on the other side of the coin, what influence will Intuit's resources and connection with TSheets will have on your team, on your product, and everything else?
Takes our vision, we're doubling every year right now, which is very fast, and puts us in a pretty elite group of SaaS companies in the world. And I think it just accelerates it. I mean, I think we just go to probably triple. I mean, we're going to get millions of small businesses on TSheets or the time capture product as soon as physically possible.
Right. And so let's wrap this up with what's in the future, Matt. New products, innovation, new services. Will this spearhead the notion that TSheets will use the same know-how to build other products and services, or would you just kind of double, triple down on timesheets and just continuously to be best in class at it?
Well, the vast majority of small businesses still use paper and spreadsheets and old antiquated time clocks to track time. So it's just a wide open market for us to capture. So that'll stay a focus. It is so core to what we do. But something, that's it's not talked about as much. But I guess he's a chief product officer at Intuit, Alex Chris. He is a product genius. Like, he gets me excited about my own damn product. And some of the ideas that we have, and how we're going to be able to create synergies between the two products is going to be super exciting. So, it's funny. I was speaking at a conference yesterday. I just had a speaking engagement that I should not have committed to. And I did forever ago, and it just happened to be like the day after we announced, right? And it was a huge crowd, and I ended up taking some questions. And one of them said, so, now that you're acquired by such a big company, how are you going to stay relevant? And I'm like, are you kidding me? We're going to move so fast, and we have so many really cool product ideas that, relevant isn't an issue. It's just like, how do we execute fast enough?
We're staying in Idaho, or we're moving to California. Is that any in the horizon? Any conversations about moving and merging physical locations?
No, the rooftop is staying right here in Eagle. All the employees are staying right here. All the employees are staying on, it doesn't miss a beat. We just keep right on cranking. You
continue to be an independent company owned by a bigger company.
Well, we won't be independent. It will be a segment on the small business group. So the independence goes like away, but will be a segment. Will be like, for instance, it goes like self-employed. It goes QBO, QBD, and then it goes payroll, and it goes time capture. And those are all segments on the small business team.
But we don't foresee TSheets to be a product that will be rolled into QuickBooks somehow. It will continue, at least in the short term, to be a separate product that you buy separately and all that stuff.
Yes, for the short term, but certainly the plan is to take the billing and put them together, and it's absolutely to continue to embed more and more of the functionality. You will see, you won't know you're using it, but you'll be using it inside of QuickBooks Online. It's going to get exciting.
Awesome, Matt. Thank you very much for your time. Give a last shout out to your team and their contributions to what you guys been able to achieve.
I will. And likewise, congratulations on everything you're doing, Hector. Thank you for having me on your show and on your video, and look forward to many more conversations. We have a lot to do together.
All righty, Matt. We'll talk. Bye. Enjoy the cold weather.
Yeah. All right.